So, talking about how I relate to God, to Jesus in particular, as my God, I have learned to do the practice of listening prayer. It's kind of like prayer journaling, if you will. This is something that's extremely important to me. Ever since I was a kid, I struggled to understand how, you could relate to God if you couldn't hear his voice. And I personally believe that God still speaks and that he still speaks today. This doesn't mean he's necessarily writing new scripture. I don't think that, but I base everything I hear from the Lord has to be based in scripture and, have that foundation there. And as long as it doesn't contradict the scripture, it can be used for edification, for encouragement, you know, not to use fancy words. But listening and hearing the Lord speaking is something that I really, really struggled with for a lot of my life. And I grew to understand it better by books like Mark Verkler's Dialogue with God. That was one big breakthrough for me. But even after I read his book, it took me probably 15 years, maybe 20, to really uh, like trying it in the mess of life, journaling and hearing the Lord speaking and everything, until I finally felt like I could really hear the Lord and not have so much fear attached to it. Like, am I doing this right? Am I wrong about this? Is this my voice? Is this God's voice? I feel a lot better about it now. Not to say I'm perfect by any means. Um, so for those unfamiliar with this practice, it involves sitting down, quieting your mind, and by that I mean um, putting to the side things you're thinking about, the busy things of life. Oh, I need to buy this at the grocery store. Oh, I need to do this to-do list of things, And if you have trouble setting that aside, one thing Mark Verkler suggested was having a notebook and writing these things in your mind, off to the side on a list so that you don't forget about them. And that once you list them, your mind is like, okay, I won't forget. I can be quiet now. you know? And so uh, sitting down, doing that, putting aside the things you're thinking about, and I try to sit, it's a little bit small version of being still with God as well, just being aware of his presence. I try to be aware of him, aware that he is with me in this moment, right as I'm speaking. He's aware of me. He is with me. He never leaves me. He's always with me, and I can just know that he is with me and just try to be as aware of that as possible, of that fact, of that amazing fact. And then I ask the Lord, and I typically, something I do that comes actually from Jamie Winship, another person I look up to, is I'll pray and ask the Lord to bind anything that's not of him in the room and space that I'm in, saying, go to Jesus, do what Jesus tells you to do. And I'll do that. And then I will ask the Lord, what do you want me to know? Just that simple question. And I will look in my mind for anything, pictures or thoughts that come to my mind, that just come spontaneously. This is part of uh, something that Mark Verkler's book, Dialogue with God, mentions and talks about. Spontaneous thoughts, that the Lord can insert thoughts into our mind, and that's one way the Spirit can speak to us. So I'll write down everything I hear from that flow with the Lord. Any pictures I see, I'll write that down. I don't judge anything while I'm writing because that stops the flow of thought. You want to just judge it after, later, not in the moment. So I'll do that, and then I will sit with it and pray. And, you know, I have also some mentors and spiritual mentors that I look up to that I'll oftentimes share my prayer journal with and say, "Hey, do you think this sounds like the Lord to you?" Or, I did that a lot in the past, especially while I was learning this. And that's another way that I relate to the Lord. And the Lord has shared with me some very many beautiful things, and talking about his love for me, and talking about, you know, how I don't need to be afraid, and talking about how he'll never leave me. He'll he mentions that a lot because it's one thing I've always been afraid of. Um, and so things like that are very meaningful to me, and it's very important to me in my walk with God.